Okay, so how did you two first meet?
We met at a YCW meeting, which is a Young Christian Worker meeting in Waukegan. And John was a speaker that day for that meeting, and he spoke about the selectric typewriters. And after that, he joined YCW, and we started dating.
What did you first think of her, Grandpa?
What did you think about me?
What I think about it, I was so fascinated with this girl and her past, being in the convent, and how interesting our conversation was all the time.
What about you, Grandma? What did you think?
Well, I'll tell you, at the very first meeting, I had just come back from Colorado. I went skiing. We went to visit my sister Judy. My sister Kathy and I did that. And so I had that little skiing thing behind me. And the priest who was kind of in charge of YCW knew that I had been in the convent. And after John spoke, the priest called me over and introduced me to John. And he said, and Marianne just came back from skiing. And John's comment was, oh, that's nice. You ought to join the Jack and Jill Club. Well, I kind of thought he should have said he'd like to take me to the Jack and Jill Club. So my first impression of him was, not great. But at the meetings, he did join, and when he comes to the meeting, I was very impressed with all his knowledge about running a meeting. And he had, all the rules down for having an exciting meeting going on, and I was impressed on his knowledge of how to run a meeting. And so time went by, because this happened to be, we met in November, and we would see each other at the meetings, and nothing kind of really didn't sprout anything out of there. And on May 5th, following May 5th, we had a progressive dinner, and John, since we were all singles, men and women, some of the men would pick up 2 or 3 women and bring them and so John King had 2 women and brought it, and the cocktails were at my place. And that night he really was attentive. He helped me with things. We got to places, and he was very conservative with his actions kind of in the beginning. He really didn't know me then. Well, it was that night that he found out that I told him that I was in a convent, because no one knew. The priest asked me not to tell anyone, because when we went to the Bible section of the meeting, they would all look to me for an answer, and it's true. So he didn't know. But that night at the last house for the progressive dinner, we went out walking in the rain, and I slipped, and I said, when I had an ulcer when I was in the convent, and I thought his mouth would just drop.
I was just blown away. I just found it so fascinating and so uniquely different. And at the time, I was getting back to Catholicism, and to come across Marianne was exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah. I tell you, he married me to save him from hell.
That's right. If I hadn't met her, I probably wouldn't be where I am today.
But from there, it went like wildfire. The next day, he took me home to meet his family. He's the second oldest of 12, so you know what that was. It was like eating in a barracks. I mean, it was just crowded.
Chaos.
And chaos. The boys would argue, and but it was very, very interesting. From then on, we started dating. He saw me a lot of times. And so May 5th, May 29th was the Memorial Day picnic for the YCW. We all went out for a picnic, and he asked me to marry him. Oh. I looked at him and I said, you don't even know me. And he said, well, I could know you for 25 years and you'd still surprise me. So I said he had to wait for an answer. And I made him wait 2 long weeks.
That was terrible.
And 2
I
weeks
wanted to get
later,
married
I
right
said
away.
yes. And so that's, a 3-week whirlwind, but here we are, 50 years. 50 years.
50 years.
And who said it wouldn't last?
Who did?
When was the first time you guys kissed?
Well, that's
Oh,
interesting.
wow.
It was that night when he brought me home from the party, from that big dance where he found out I was a nun. It, mind you, it was like 2 in the morning. He dumped the other 2 girls he brought onto somebody else to take home, and he took me home. And then we went into the house, and he had a cup of coffee, and he looked through my album that I had of when I was a nun and what was going on. He was just, fascinated. And then he said good night, and he kissed me and said, "Oh my gosh, I kissed a nun." Well, not really. He should have said an ex-nun, but that's what he said. And then that was the first. But that was like,
Many kisses followed.
Then in all the 50 years you've been married, what's the best memory you have?
Ooh. What's the best memory? I have to think about that.
It's 50 long years.
I think the best memory we have is when I said we were going to have a baby, and that was such a special moment, and it was so funny because when I said we were going to have a baby, I think John said something about like what will we name it? Like it's just we didn't have it yet really, and it was funny because I answered. I said, "I'm going to name the baby Bridget Ann," and he said, "Oh wow, yeah, I knew you would do something like that." Well, Bridget Ann was the name I had in the convent, and so I had Bridget Ann, and I just knew. In those days, they didn't tell you what the baby was, and I just kept saying, "It's Bridget Ann. I'm going to have a girl," and sure enough, we had Bridget Ann, and then we had a Michael, and then we had a Julie, and then we had
Steve.
a Steve, and each one was so exciting in our life. It was wonderful. We sandwiched those 4 children in 6 years, and they were great playing games together. They could play games together, and you never saw such fights before in your whole life. They could fight well too. So, but then they grew up to be wonderful people.
Was that your favorite moment too?
Say again.
Was that your favorite memory too, Grandpa?
You got some other ones I bet.
Oh, there were some of the trips we took together, the cruises, the seeing Europe and Ireland.
Yeah, that was. Our life has been full of so many wonderful things. So many wonderful things. It's wonderful because when I look back, I thought, wow, I was single, I was a nun, and I'm married. I had three different options there in my life.
Grandpa, what was your favorite thing about Grandma?
Favorite things? Well, she's so pretty. But, I think the fact that we can communicate so well, and we just enjoy each
We
other.
clicked.
We click.
That's yours too.
Well, John's very interesting. He is probably more patient than I am. His patience it's really a gift because he has so much patience. I kind of blow off the handle every once in a while, but not too bad. But yeah, and he was caring, and we just seemed to like, there was nothing we couldn't tell each other, and I think we're best friends because we know everything about each other.
Well, it was 50 years of marital bliss. And really an exciting thing to think about. And we couldn't have had it any better.
What about your wedding? How was your wedding?
Oh, my wedding was
Oh, we had a
wonderful.
big wedding.
We had a big wedding. My mom and dad, I'm sure, owed it to bring people to our wedding because they had gone to so many weddings. Well, it was interesting. We had a big wedding at the Lithuanian Hall. There were 750 people. I didn't know hardly any of them. I mean, I had just been in the convent for 9 years. And so we're standing in the greeting line and you come up, well, I'm a good friend of your dad. I knew your mother a long
I
time.
played
and-
baseball with your father.
Right. And there was like, a handful of people I knew that weren't part of the family. So we were standing there and it really got to be kind of funny. And it was a great party though. It was unbelievable. The band, we didn't leave there till 12:30 at night and they were kicking us out. I remember my mom saying to me when I was getting married, she, oh, everybody gets married and they leave the reception, and I looked at her and I said, you really think we're gonna leave a party? And then the funnier thing was 25 years later, we went on our first cruise and we celebrated our anniversary on the cruise. And they came and they sang and they brought a bottle of champagne and a cake at our table. And I looked at John and I said, look at how familiar this is. 25 years later, we're sitting here with this cake and the champagne, and I'm looking around, there are 750 people here, and I don't know any of them either. So it was really, it was neat. And that began our cruise life. I think every year after that, we took a cruise.
Oh.
Best vacation, best way to go.
What are your thoughts about your 50th anniversary?
Now,
Well, we just,
it's kind of thrilling to know that you're having it. There are a lot of our friends that never made it to 50. John's mom and dad didn't make it to their
we
50th.
had 12 kids and didn't make it.
Didn't make it. My mom and dad did, and that was a party too. That was a big party. And so I'm looking forward to seeing, because I'm sure we're going to get a lot of family in, and that's just going to be fun to see everybody and all the children. I think we're going to have, I bet, over 20 children, which is really great. And so, yeah, it's a lot. It's wonderful to think about a golden jubilee in the making.
Are you guys looking forward to the rest of your years of marriage?
Oh yes,
Oh, sure.
oh yes. We'd like a lot of them, right?
Right.
Well then, happy anniversary.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Sweet Katie. Sarah Goosey.
Oh no, that's okay. I'm just trying to stop recording now.
It's still recording.